Okay, so this is part 2 of how to wire stuff, and this we're going to go into a little more detail. So if you remember, we have a switch, a relay, controlling a load. Turn the switch off, load goes off, power is cut, doesn't drain your battery. Turn the switch on, and then it works. And we're currently charging, it's up to about 12.9. And so to wire this relay, we have number 86, which is your positive trigger source. That can be your ignition, or in our case, the switch. We have number 87, which is your load, the device, the pump, the fans, the charge ports, whatever you, or power ports, whatever you want to run. Then we have number 85, which is your main ground, and that's only going to be a ground for this relay, so that can be light gauge also, 16 gauge. And then we have number 30, which is the main battery feed to the relay, and that's going to be up to a max of whatever the relay can handle, basically, is where you want to limit it. So make sure you get a fuse or a circuit breaker in there. There's multiple different kinds I showed you in the previous. But if we want to add on a little bit, so let's say, now like for another project, I'm modifying a device which has this basic setup. From the factory, it came with a relay and a switch. Well, I added in another switch. So essentially, how that's going to work is all you do is you add your switch in there. Like that. Okay. This is your switch source. And it just goes to one side of the switch, and then the other side just goes to your switch. So all you're doing is interrupting your circuit with another switch. So why do we need to do that? Well, there's different reasons. For example, this is a temperature switch. So we'd use this to control the temperature. Now this one is called a normally closed. So that means normally, like the description, the circuit in here is closed, so it'll send power. Now this is a temperature operated switch, so that when this heats up, it will open the circuit and stop the current flow. So if it got too warm in a cabinet, something like this would shut the device off, let it cool down. When it turns back on, then it'll start flowing the power again. Another option is something like this, which is an air pressure switch. So what this does is, as it's labeled on here, turns off at 120 psi and turns on, or turns off, I'm sorry, I got that mixed up, off at 120 psi, on at 90. So in a air compressor, when your air pressure drops below 90, it'll turn on, run the compressor till air pressure gets up to 120, and then shut it off. And it'll just keep cycling like that. So this would be put in here in place of the switch, because that's what it does, is it controls So in another application, this would get wired in this way. So that would run, because essentially there's no air pressure, so it says it's low. We need to run till it gets up to 120 psi, then it'll shut off and the switch opens. So there's all kinds of different things you can do. So getting into more of the actual wiring stuff, we talked about one of these. Now, going backwards a little bit, cars are what is called a negative ground system. So what that means is the whole frame and everything metal on the car, the engine, the body, is all connected together, and it's all negative. So technically, all you need to do is run a positive wire, connect negative or the ground to the frame. Now, you're always better off running a separate ground wire, but technically that will work. So what happens, ooh, I lost you guys. Say this was your frame, and you're trying to run your wiring through, which is positive. Okay, now I don't know about your car, but mine get kind of bumpy when you go over, and so it'll just sit there and rub. Okay, you got a positive rubbing on a negative, and it will sit there and just bounce and jiggle, and it will saw its way right through that insulation. And then poof, there goes your fuse or your circuit breaker. Problem is, you have no idea where that is. You know, you have a few feet of wiring run. If you're lucky, you can find it. So you always want to protect your wiring. How do you do that? Well, some of the easiest ways is with split loom, wire loom, split loom. Different people call it different things. What that is it's just plastic, and it splits apart. You put your wiring in there. But it's still only plastic. So always, always, always run your wiring in split loom. By the way, this is really cheap at Harbor Freight. Cheapest place I've found for it. And it's pretty much all the same no matter where you get it. What else you can do is, let's say this was our wiring. take a piece of heater hose, okay? Slice it down, doesn't matter how long it is, 3 inches, 5 inches, whatever. Wrap that right around. Put a zip tie on there. You could drill a hole in the frame. Put your zip tie on there. And that thick rubber will keep everything from rubbing through, shorting your stuff out. Now, if you, for example, have multiple relays and say you want to tie all the negatives together, how do you do that? Because there's only one terminal, right? This one's not labeled, but you can use this double terminal, double tap. I don't know what exactly they're called, but they're available in all the normal sizes. You stick it on there, and it allows you to stick another terminal on there. Oops, now you got two. So you have one coming to one relay, and this one would go to a second relay, and you could even do another one of these on that one, do it to a third relay, and now all your negatives are all connected together. The other option is to run one separate to the frame or whatever from each relay, but different ways you can do it. Now, as we were talking about any of these terminals, you always want to use protection on the positives at a minimum. Insulated terminals, insulated butt connectors, you can also use heat shrink, which is real popular. If you, for example, have like that, put that over, obviously cut it short, heat shrink it, it seals it all up real good. There's also fancier connectors that have adhesive in the heat shrink. Now, like these are just plain ones, so all it does is it shrinks down. Now they're more of a marine application, would have adhesive in there, which also helps seal it a little bit better. A little bit more expensive, but in some applications, that's what you want. What else can I tell you? There are some meters that allow you to test the current draw, the amperage. And so this one doesn't have it, but you would just find the setting on there, and usually it'll just be an A. And sometimes the plug-in wires you have to move, and one of them will be labeled A, and that will put the meter into a current test. So what you would want to do for that is basically take your leads. I got alligator clips on here because it makes it a little bit easier than just the regular ones. Go like that. Basically just put it in between, so all the current runs from your source through the meter and then onto your circuit. And then in the display, it will show you, 1 amp, 2 amps. Now, be careful with all these cheap little meters. They max at like 10 amps. If you're not sure how many amps your circuit is, you're better off not using it, not trying it, because you will blow the fuse in there. Good luck finding the fuse that fits in there. If you've never stripped wires before, this is kind of a all-in-one type thing. It's labeled stranded and solid wires. I know this is 16 gauge stranded, and so you just go for the stranded, figure out how much you want to strip. There you go. Put your terminal on there. (10 to 16 gauge, 22 to 18). Again, this is 16 gauge. Now, the proper way to use this is, it's really hard to tell, but as you can see the little gap in the aluminum? Okay, what that is 2 wings that come over from each side, and there's a split in the middle. So what you want is the rounded part over that, so it doesn't spread it open, and the little pointy part back here in the back side where it's solid. Squeeze it, crimp it, check it, and you're done. Put heat shrink on it if you need to, or whatever. And there you go. I think that about covers everything that I was going to tell you. Yeah, I think that'll pretty much cover it. So hopefully this has helped you. And if you have any more questions or a problem you're running into as you're doing this stuff, feel free to leave a comment. I'll have all the info listed down below in the description. Once you do this stuff, get the hang of it, wire these up a couple times. It's not really too complicated. All you're doing is following the current path. Okay, so it goes from the battery into terminal 30, and that is hot all the time. Battery is hot all the time, but that's obviously bad in some cases because it'll kill your battery. This would also come from your battery or ground. That would be bolted to the frame of your car, etc. So this is your signal source. So from your switch, your ignition circuit or whatever, it will send power when it gets that signal over to the device you're trying to power. Make sure you size your wire right. Other than that, you should be good. Like I said, these are really good. If you need something quick, these work pretty good. Just pop it in there. But I like an actual numerical display, digital display on my dash. So you can just cut a hole, pop this in there, or take your existing one out. All it is just obviously I just put it in the box to hold it. They're real easy. Just got a positive and negative on the back. So yeah, any other questions, feel free to, or something you want to know, or something you want another video on specifically, or how to understand something, let me know.